Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. After I did like my stories of my life, videos and going over some stuff so that I could get them on record for when my brain starts to deteriorate. It's funny because then recently my parents, God bless them, their brains started deteriorating. So both of my parents at the same time, at the ripe old age of 71 and 72, have started getting some symptoms of some pretty heavy, rapid onset dementia. So apparently, sometimes it's more short-term memory than long-term. But again, one of my worst fears of my life. Apparently, that's what I have to look forward to in about 30 years is cancer and dementia. If I make it that far, tomorrow is not a guarantee. All right, people. Too many people live life going, oh, in 10 years and 20 years this, and when I'm that old that, and no, there's no guarantee you're going to graduate from high school. There's no guarantee you're going to make it to the age of 30. Be thankful for each day you have. So speaking of thankful, so I also wanted to get some other things on record. I just turned 40 a few months ago. Last week, Rebecca Ferguson just turned 40. Bless her. Bless her. That has nothing to do with anything. I just love her, and I thought that's pretty cool that we're about the same age. I think Emily Blunt is about to turn 40. So I'm a fan of a lot of cool people that were born in '83 along with me, including Return of the Jedi that turned 40 like uh, um, um, a month before I did. Anywho, sidetracked. So I wanted to document something else. I have been very fortunate and blessed to see a crap ton, and I mean crap ton, of artists live. I say artists because it's mostly bands, groups, some solo, and a few comedians. But I've seen a lot, especially for someone my age, my generation. Some of these are very like, wow, good for you. Like I'm very lucky, and I acknowledge how blessed I am to have seen these. And I'll say, like, when people go, oh my gosh, you've done all this, you've done that, you've met this person, you've seen them live. Wow. The only difference between me and someone who hasn't is that I did it. Sure, it takes money. And some might say, oh, don't prioritize things like that over other things. I can pay a bill late if I have to. The bill's still going to be there. But some of these experiences are once in a lifetime. And the memories we have from doing these things with our loved ones and experiencing these things are far more valuable than let me save this money in the bank in case I get a flat tire. No, I'd rather be stranded somewhere and have these memories than not do these things and be safe and secure. Here I am, everything's fine. And I did all of these things, most of which money out of my pocket, very, very expensive. But you do it. Just do it. If your favorite artist is coming to town, I mean, yeah, unless it's like Taylor Swift and you got to spend like $1,000 per ticket, that's a different story. Don't get me started on that right now. Anyway, but just do it. If your favorite artist is coming to town, go. If you're thinking, oh, I'll barely be able to afford it, go. You'll be glad you did. Boom, bucket list checked off. Speaking of, this is pretty much a bucket list of what I have here. I haven't seen everybody that I've always wanted to see, but I've seen like 95% of any artist I would want to see live. I've been very, very blessed. So I'll go through this list as fast as I can. It's a decently long list, and I'm sure some of them I will have a lot to say about, and I'll probably have something to say about all of them. So here we go. My very first concert, technically, I say technically because it was my very first concert, but I don't like to acknowledge it as my very first concert because it was like my mom took me to a thing because she figured I would like it, but then after that was something that I really wanted to go to and was very monumentous to be like considered my first. Well, my very first concert was Michael W. Smith. You may have heard of him, you may not. It was a good time. But then, what I like to consider my very first concert was when I went on vacation with my father to Toronto, Canada, right a stone's throw away from where I was born in Kitchener, Ontario. We got tickets to see Weird Al Yankovic live, and I was what, like, man, 13? 12? 11? 11. 10? 10? No, 9? I don't know. I don't know. But I was wee little, and I remember we were waiting in line because there was general admission, so we waited there for a while so that we could get a good seat, and blew my freaking mind when all of a sudden the crowd started cheering, like the line of people around the block started cheering. I'm like, what's their problem? Boom. Comes walking around the corner, Weird Al Yankovic. He literally walked past the whole line, waving at everybody, and went into the front door. I've never seen any artist do that before or since. Well, obviously not before, but that's unheard of. So my first glimpse of Weird Al was before we were even inside the venue. I'm like, and he was chumming it up with some kid who was decked out cosplay like an Amish Paradise costume with the beard and then the hat. Anyway, so I got to see Weird Al Yankovic, and in total, because then my dad would go every time he was in town. There was one time when he did 2 nights in a row, and we stayed the night in Denver, and we saw him both shows that he was there. Yeah, I have seen Weird Al. My dad hasn't gone to every single one because then the torch was kind of passed to where my son's first concert was Weird Al Yankovic with my father. So my father and I, our first concert together was Weird Al, and then we saw Weird Al a bunch in between, and then my son's first concert was me and my father taking him to see Weird Al, and then I continued to take him to see Weird Al, including the last time we saw Weird Al, which was last year, with, again, my father and my son. I have seen Weird Al Yankovic 13 times. 1-3. Take that, Taylor Swift. Because 13. So I'm very, very, very blessed for that. Including the fact that I've taken my son, I've taken my father, and the one of the times I took my son, we made a very, very treacherous drive through the mountains during a winter storm where I'm shocked that we survived. And it was like a 6-hour drive to get to somewhere else in the state because it was the closest place was sold out, but I really wanted to get the meet and greet tickets. I got the meet and greet tickets, and I got to meet, my son and I met Weird Al, got his autograph. I got to share him the story of how I grew up on his music thanks to my father, and he has given me so many memories with my father, and now he's giving me memories with my son, like 3 generations of a close-knit relationship based on his music. He was very, very grateful for that. So that was a wonderful experience, getting a picture taken with Weird Al and my son. All right, so I've seen Weird Al 13 times. Korn is my all-time favorite band, period, the end. Jonathan Davis has saved my life so many times, literally. That's the case for many, 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 many people, many Korn fans. Jonathan Davis saved their life, literally. Because you're going through stuff as a teenager, especially growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, and the turmoil of being a teenager, and oh, woe is me, nobody loves me, and I feel so alone, and I have anxiety, but we didn't know what social anxiety was yet, and the girl broke my heart, and I can't live without her, but to this day, I remember I discovered Korn in the 3rd album. Yeah, it was Follow the Leader came out. And I was in high school when Follow the Leader came out. I believe either freshman or sophomore year, one of the two. And one of my classmates, I overheard him talking to someone else because he was a huge Korn fan. And they were like, oh, I heard Korn's CD came out yesterday. How was it? And he was like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And I specifically remember him saying something about how there was a hidden track on that particular CD. And it was so awesome and exciting because it was a song from a Cheech and Chong movie. And it was Cheech on the CD singing it with them. And I was like, what? And then, of course, I was a huge fan of Freak on a Leash and Got the Life on the radio that I was like, okay, I'll check this CD out. The rest is history. To this day, screaming and belting and singing along with Korn, whether it's their first album all the way throughout to their newest, is the best therapy I've ever had in my life. Those lyrics that he's written, the things that he's been through that I can relate to, that's how I let the negative energy out. Energy doesn't dissipate, doesn't go when it goes away. Energy is dispersed not destroyed. So when you have something negative inside, just let it out. You know how all of a sudden you're doing just fine and for some unexplained reason you're in a bad mood? I think that's because somebody else let their negative energy out and it just floated over to you. So I let my negative energy out with Korn. I've seen Korn 10 times. 10 times. The last time I saw them, I mean, I had seen them with so many people, whether it was a first date or my best friend at the time, or my wife at the time, or my ex-wife at the time. But the last time I saw them was supposed to be with my at the time best friend slash ex-wife, because she was a huge fan and she like had a huge crush on Jonathan Davis, and I got VIP tickets to meet them, and then she moved right before the concert and didn't go, so I had to take my brother. It sucks that she didn't get to meet them, but I got to meet them. I met Korn. All their members. It was right after they got their new drummer, so I didn't meet their original drummer, David, but it was after they had gotten Head back. So I got to meet all of them, including their new drummer, and I was like, this is my first time seeing you drum, and he was like, I'll try not to screw it up for you. And I was like, okay. He was amazing, by the way. I think he's a much better drummer than David. No offense to David. But I shook all of their hands except when Jonathan Davis walked up to me. I was way too nervous. Like, I stuck my hand out for the others. Like, great to meet you, great to meet you. They signed my ticket, told them how awesome it was, told them how excited I was for their news. Because at the time it was, what's it called? The insane one with the kid with the bear and the album cover with what's that? Why am I blanking on the name of that album? It's the one that has Insane on it. Anyway, it was like the second time ever they played their new song, and it was before that song had even been released. So I got to hear their brand new song for the first time live right after meeting them. Oh, it was crazy. Anyway, so I shook all their hands, but then Jonathan Davis came up to me, and I'm just like this is royal. This is a man who literally saved my life, and that's what I got to say to him. I said, I literally said, I know you've heard this a billion times, but I have to thank you for saving my life over and over and over. And he looked at me right in the eye, and he smiled, and he said, thank you. He thanked me. He said, thank you. And I was way too shy with Mr. freaking Jonathan Davis to extend my hand to that man. But he extended his hand to me. He shook my hand. Korn, nicest guys in the freaking world. What is that album? Never mind. It doesn't matter. But it was a couple, like two or three albums ago, depending on whether or not you count their last. But anyway, the one with the carnival and the kid holding the bear. Anywho, so Korn, I've seen 10 freaking times, and after meeting them and hearing Blind a billion freaking times at the end of every show, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I've seen Korn. I can't get hit in the head with a shoe again. That was my wife who got hit in the head with a shoe at a Korn concert. Who throws a shoe? Apparently Korn fans. But speaking of Korn, my best friend, ex-wife at the time, after that, Jonathan Davis went on tour for his solo album. So we saw Jonathan Davis's one and only tour. And it was before the album had come out. And he played every single song but one, which ironically enough is my favorite song on the album. But he played every single song but that one song at the concert. So we got to literally hear the entire album for the first time live. And we will never forget how, like, the energy in that building was so immense of how happy he was. That was like because he was so excited to be sharing this solo album with the world. He was so happy we could feel it. It was the happiest I would ever see Jonathan Davis in the same room. Because it was actually shortly after that his estranged wife, who he was separated from at the time, died. And then he did the Nothing album, which is pretty hardcore. So yeah, Jonathan Davis. Saw him. Tool. That's like my parents saying they saw the Beatles. because if you ask me, the two greatest bands of all time are the Beatles and Tool, the most influential, game-changing, doing things with music that no one else has ever done before, making the greatest product of all time. I got to see Tool 4 times. I've seen Tool 4 times, and they're amazing. The first time I saw Tool was at Red Rocks. Red Rocks. A crazy looking bug landed on my shoulder during the song Lateralis, and we decided that that bug was called a Lateralis bug. During Enema, it started raining. If you know Tool, if you know the song Enema, and or you know the Red Rocks Amphitheater, the greatest place on the planet to see a concert, you would understand how insane it was that it started raining during Enema. Tool, one of the greatest performers of all time. Speaking of Maynard, lead singer of Tool, he has a couple of other bands. And yeah, I've seen Puscifer twice. The first time I saw Puscifer, they didn't play my favorite song and I was all bummed. And then we caught them on the second leg of the same tour, different city, played that song. And A Perfect Circle. I have seen A Perfect Circle one time, and that one time happened to be on Maynard's birthday. And during said concert, he not only played my favorite Perfect Circle song of all time, Thinking of You, but during that song, during the big Thinking of You part, I don't know if you're aware of what that song is about, but let's just say it's about thinking of someone while gratifying yourself. So during the big build-up, like best part of the song, he just busts this out and says, busted out the shake weight for my birthday. And he starts shake weighting during my favorite song. Which is why for my 40th birthday, all I wanted was a shake weight. And I got one. From my son. So that was cool. So yes, I've seen all three of Maynard's bands, including I saw a live reading / night with / interview with Maynard James Keenan for his book tour. I saw Maynard on his book tour. So I've seen Maynard 8 times with 3 bands and 1 book. We got a copy of the book. I even got to have some of his wine because they were selling it at that show. Yeah, very blessed I am. Ani DiFranco. I'm a huge fan of Ani DiFranco. I discovered her with my dad. We were both at Barnes & Noble, and they had like to put on the headphones and check out some CDs to sample. And we were both doing that on separate little terminals. And at the same time, we looked at each other and was like, hey, check this out. And we were both literally at the exact same moment discovering Ani DiFranco together and looking at each other saying, you would like this. And ever since, we followed her career together. And we saw her together once, and then I saw her on my own once because he couldn't make that show. And he's seen her alone many times. Bjork. I got to see Bjork at Red Rocks. Oh my gosh. And it was during her like best album ever, the one that's got Declare Independence. And at the end, for the encore, she was like, I'm going to sing a very quiet song to put you all to sleep now for the end of the night. And then she started playing Declare Independence, which, if you don't know, is like the most bumpin', on your feet, let's dance, let's rock and roll, great beat, awesome Bjork song ever. And that place was bumpin'. Again, Red Rocks. And that was the first time I ever had a beer with my dad. Seeing Bjork, he goes off to go to the bathroom, comes back with 2 Blue Moons. Here you go. No question, just bought them, handed one to me. First time I ever had a beer with my dad. It was Blue Moon, and it was a Bjork concert at Red Rocks. All of those things now have very special meaning to me. Blue Moon is like my favorite beer of all time. Okay, so we're not even halfway through this list. I'm going to try not to keep going. Tom Waits. Tom Waits. If you've never heard of Tom Waits, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you, and you should go look up his music. He's probably the greatest lyricist of all time. And he's a great musician, and he's done everything. He's been in plenty of movies. You'll probably recognize him some way, one way or another, but Tom Waits is not someone everyone gets to see. Tom Waits is very, 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 very special to get to see. And I got to see Tom Waits. My dad took me. At the time, I was very bummed because I was all hung up over a girl and I had to spend an evening where I couldn't hang out with her. I had to go to this concert. But I liked Tom Waits at the time. Since then, I became a much bigger fan of Tom Waits. So I wasn't fully engaged in the concert when I was there, but I'm so thankful that I have that memory, that I got to see him live. He came down with a bullhorn from the back of the theater up to the stage, through the aisles, throwing confetti. That's confetti. Throwing confetti. That's how he came out, with a bullhorn. Ladies and gentlemen, here I come down the hall, and came down the aisle and went up there. We were really close seats, and he had this tiny little stage that he stood on, but it was covered in dirt and dust, so that when he stomped on it or did certain beats, this big plume of dust and dirt would fly all over the place. Oh, absolutely fantastic show. Tom Waits, what a showman. I'm so thankful I got to see Tom Waits. Lewis Black, the comedian Lewis Black. He's my favorite comedian. Most of you might know him as the voice of Anger from Inside Out. But he's been my favorite comedian ever since my dad and I would watch him on The Daily Show. And after his show at the Pikes Peak Center, I got to meet him. He stuck around and was like, hey, I'll be signing my... Signed my thing. I got to say, hey, I've been a fan since The Daily Show. Oh, that long. I was like, oh, and I made some joke and made him laugh. I made my favorite comedian laugh. Shook his hand. I actually have a picture of me shaking his hand, thank goodness. And it was just crazy. Because then later in life, I ended up doing a 7-day stint in the penitentiary. And they had his book there. And I killed that whole week by reading his book. And it was an amazing book. And a lot of the book talked about his time in Colorado Springs and places like the Pikes Peak Center, which is literally where I saw and met him. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. I was going to see him again when they finally went back on tour after COVID. I ditched having COVID through all of COVID, and then literally the week of his show, I got COVID, and I couldn't go. And I told him that on Twitter. And I said, Ticketmaster won't give me a refund. And he was like, typical, reach out to my team on my website the next time I'm in your area and we'll take care of you. And I was like, wow, that's the sweetest thing for him to not only acknowledge and respond to my tweet, but to offer me tickets to make up for it, because Ticketmaster sucks. And ever since, he hasn't come back to my area. Maybe sometime soon. Maybe someday. You'd think he would come back to the Springs. He used to live here, for goodness sake. Anyway, but I did get to meet him. Jerry Seinfeld. I was fortunate enough to see Jerry Seinfeld live. It was his I'm Telling You for the Last Time tour. So this was a while ago. I was like a teenager. So this must have been 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. Wait. 20, 25 years ago. Whew. Man, I'm so fortunate. System of a Down. System of a Down. I've seen live. Granted, they still go on tour, but I saw them for their last album promoting tour. All they had was 3 rugs. 3 big rugs. One underneath each of them. One of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my life. That's all they needed was rugs. By the way, most of these bands I've seen because they opened for Korn. That's not the case for System of a Down. They were headlining. But because of System of a Down headlining, do I have them later on the list? Yeah, they're later on the list, so I'll mention. But anyway, System of a Down, fantastic show. Godsmack. Wasn't a huge fan of Godsmack, but my girlfriend at the time was, and so she took me to this concert. So I wasn't like, I was just there to see a show, have a good time. I was familiar enough with Godsmack and their big hits, but I wasn't like a Godsmack fan. But holy freaking crap, their stage production, with the sets, with the videos, with the fire, Godsmack, who again, I'm not even a fan of, put on one of, if not the greatest show I have ever seen live. Like, holy crap, did they put a lot into that. And the lead singer, at one point throughout the show, played every single instrument. He was playing drums, he was playing bass, he was playing guitar, he was playing keyboards, he was singing. That guy is freaking talented. 9 Inch Nails. got to see Nine Inch Nails during their tour where they ended up doing a DVD for it. So I actually have the whole show on DVD. What do they call it? All Things in Time or something like that tour. And they had the big curtain and it eventually drops, but they would project things on the curtain. It'd be really cool. At one point, he smashes the curtain. That's like glass breaks while the curtain comes down. Oh, fantastic show. I would look it up. I would highly recommend it. The only thing was, during that show, this was the only time we got to see Nine Inch Nails. It was with my wife and I at the time. Something felt off. We were like, something's... Like, even during that one, during Star Rivers, there's that point where, I bet you think this song is about you, don't you? And he, like, stopped the song, and he's like, I'm so sick of playing this part, and I thought it was clever when I wrote it, but now it's just dumb. But just something about his mood, because you can tell, when you go to a live show, they feed off your energy, you feed off their energy. Like, it's a communal experience. It was my therapy. You get to scream out loud the lyrics of your favorite band and sing it with them. Sing it with thousands and thousands of their fans. Oh, that's probably the greatest therapy. Is like there's singing Korn and then there's singing with Korn live. You know what I mean? So the energy, you can always tell what kind of mood they're in upstage. Something was off about Trent Reznor, and we're like, I don't know. I feel like he's just not into it. He then later posts on his website, like that week, like, hey, sorry, Denver, I wasn't feeling it that night, and I'm sure some of you could tell, and we had to issue with our drummer, and we had to get this substitute, and it was just like a bad few days, and so we got confirmation of like, damn, all right, cool. I'm gonna have to make this a 2-part video. I already know. Audioslave. I got to see Audioslave live. I never got to see Rage Against the Machine. Bummer, right? So I've never seen Zach De La Rocha. I never got to see One Day as a Lion, But I did get to see Audioslave on their very first ever tour, promoting their first album, first shows out the gate before the album was even released, I think, or maybe right after it was. I think it was like the same week. I've seen Korn a few times where it was like either days right before or days right after their new album came out. But Audioslave, I'm talking Tom Morello, and we were on the floor, my roommate and I, so we were like right in front of Tom Morello. This is the greatest guitar player who's ever lived. And if you read Maynard James Keenan's book, which is a great book, Maynard actually showed him a couple of things of, maybe you should try playing the guitar like this. Just saying. Because Maynard was actually pretty close to becoming the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine. Anyway, Audioslave. So this is Rage Against the Machine, only without Zach De La Rocha. And instead, their lead singer was Chris Cornell, who is no longer with us. But I got to see him live. Actually, speaking of getting to see Chris Cornell while he was still with us, I also got to see Linkin Park when Chester was still with us. So I'm very fortunate for that. Linkin Park was actually headlining, and Korn was opening for Linkin Park. And ironically enough, we only went, my wife and I at the time, we only went to see Korn. We were like, well, we may as well hang out for Linkin Park. We liked Linkin Park. We weren't huge fans, but we liked Linkin Park. Who doesn't? But now I'm very glad I stuck around for Linkin Park. Jonathan Davis even came out to sing a song with Chester while they were performing. And I remember the friend who gave us a ride didn't have a ticket to the concert, but they went and parked at some parking garage across the street and ended up listening to the whole concert. That was a great show because it was Linkin Park headlining and Korn opened. And before Korn was freaking Snoop Dogg. Yeah. Snoop Dogg. I got to see Snoop Dogg, Korn, and Linkin Park at the same show. It was amazing. Fiddler's Green. Outdoor empty. And Snoop Dogg came out. He had this big doghouse behind him, and he had this giant tricycle. And at one point, he was like, if you got weed, then smoke it. Then smoke it. And then everybody started flicking joints up on the stage, and he literally picked one up and started smoking it. This that good Colorado shit. It was, oh man, phenomenal. Can you imagine? Yeah, I saw Snoop Dogg, Korn, and Linkin Park in one night. How blessed am I to see Chester from Linkin Park and Chris Cornell from Audioslave. May they both rest in peace. How unfortunate that they have the same cause of death. Yeah. I guess I'll talk about the rest in the next video, because that's a bummer, you know? Anyway, in the words of Snoop Dogg, if you got weed, then smoke it. Okie dokie.